You have been carbless for the last 10 years. You are the Keto Savage. The reason why he's the Keto Savage is because he's got down to 3.9% body fat.
The longer you are deeply fat adapted, the more efficient your body becomes at mobilizing glucose and glycogen in the muscle and the liver.
Have you gotten your cholesterol checked?
I want to say my total cholesterol was right around just shy of 300, so higher by modern day standards, but my ratio was totally fine. My HDL was very high, my trigs were very low, so my actual ratio was in the green.
If a keto diet was to be dangerous, it would be the same reason why any other diet could potentially be dangerous.
So when it comes to the ketogenic diet, is it just the inflammation, or is there anything else going on there when it comes to like pain management?
Yeah, I mean, the anti-inflammatory component is one of the biggest benefits of a ketogenic diet. Ketones are very anti-inflammatory in themselves. And that's honestly one of the benefits of why I do this, because I want to be able to do this for the long haul.
All right, Keto Brick, welcome to the show. I got a clip here to show you. Ryan, if you can just start it up, fire it up.
Being fat adapted is a guy who actually interviewed on my podcast. He ran 5 marathons in 5 days, completely fasted. He wanted to show that being fat adapted essentially gives you unlimited energy. Now, if you are doing a fast pace close to your VO2 max, you're going to run out of glucose and glycogen stores, and it's going to be a little bit different story. But basically anything that's 50% of VO2 max and below, you have almost endless energy if you're fat adapted. You don't rely on carbs. You don't need to eat. That's what he went out to prove. And the dude ran 5 marathons in 5 days without eating any food.
That's insanity.
Robert Sikes, you have been carbless for the last 10 years. You are the Keto Savage. What are some of your thoughts when you see a clip like that, a guy talking about running 5 marathons in a row with no carbs?
I can't say I've done that. I've run 1 marathon without carbs. I've done 50-mile marches without carbs. I've been strict keto now for 10 years without carbs. I think it makes total sense. I feel like it's totally doable. If I was an endurance athlete, I would do it without carbs. So I don't see any reason to think that it's not optimal.
What about, do you have any conjecture against what he said when he was talking about, if something's more glycolytic, maybe you do need carbs? Because you're a bodybuilder, and bodybuilding is straight up glycolytic.
Yeah, I feel like with that, my argument with that has always been the longer you are deeply fat adapted, the more efficient your body becomes at mobilizing glucose and glycogen in the muscle and the liver. And I don't feel like you would need to introduce carbs if you are deeply fat adapted. That's kind of why I've stayed strict keto, because I feel like from a glycolytic standpoint, I don't have any barriers, don't have any issues, don't have any adverse effects. But I think if you're doing extensive endurance stuff like that, you just really got to hone in on truly getting to that deep adaptation phase.
Yeah, and there's guys like Zach Bitter out there who's played around with a lot of different versions of keto, but I think that he utilizes a little bit of carbohydrate in his training.
Yeah, Zach does a little bit. Mike McKnight is another example. He does a lot of 220-mile crazy runs, and I think he'll sometimes do carbs, sometimes not. But both of them have done extensive distances without any carbs to prove that it can be done. Really, I think it's just all a matter of how deeply adapted you are. I feel like if you're not deeply adapted, then your body's going to be familiar with carbohydrates. It's going to want to use that as a fuel substrate. But if you've been strict long enough, there's no need. Like, your body finds a way without it.
You don't seem like you're on a mission to prove everybody else wrong. You seem like you're just on your own mission, doing your own thing, your own way. And this is just so happen to be what you prefer.
Yeah,
is that kind of correct? You're not trying to be like, everyone needs to do it like me and get rid of carbs, because carbs can sometimes be convenient for some athletic endeavors, right?
Yeah, I don't ever want to be, stuck in my own information silo and become dogmatic with nutrition. Like, I've done it the different ways with carbs, and I've landed on this because this is what I find to be optimal. And other people have followed suit and also find it to be optimal. So I'm just simply wanting to offer this as a suggestion or an alternative that many people would likely find success with.
What are you guys' thoughts on when he said the below 50% of your VO2 max? And the reason why I ask is because how does your body know? It's like, oh, here we go, we're over 50%. Open the floodgates, it's on now. What are your thoughts there?
I think having Chris Henshaw on the show and some other guests on the show who have kind of explained the zone 2 type stuff. You go from zone 2 to zone 3. You go from using your slow twitch muscle fibers to using your fast twitch muscle fibers. And sometimes what happens in the case of running is that sometimes people are asking their fast twitch muscles to do the things that the slow twitch muscles are supposed to be doing. Their heart rate gets to be a little bit too high and so on. And so your body kind of, it is interesting. I do agree with you. It sounds like hocus pocus a little bit, but your body sort of does shift into these like different energy modes. I would also agree with you though, that it's not like that black and white. I can't just say, oh, Andrew's heart rate's over 140. He automatically is now burning carbs instead of burning fat. But it's believed that you burn carbohydrates in a particular heart rate zone. And I think that heart rate zone could vary for each individual a little bit.
And I've never actually trained via zone training. Like I've never actually looked at my heart rate as I'm doing cardio or anything to manipulate my nutrition or training accordingly. I've actually never done a VO2 max either. So I don't know. I mean,
your heart probably doesn't even work at this point with all the fat that you eat all the time. Saturated fat. I mean, shit.
Yeah, I don't know. I tell you what, though, like when I was going elk hunting this past year, we were hiking up mountains and I'm putting in some pretty good work there. And like my heart rate was, dropping down to 70 after hiking up 3 miles, pretty quickly. So like I feel like from a conditioning standpoint, I didn't notice any detriment to not having the carbs.
Yeah, sorry for a dumb question, but like, have you gotten your cholesterol checked? Because within a span of like 24 hours, you had like 40 eggs like a couple of days ago, right? So like,
yeah,
and some keto bricks.
I'm sure of it. Yeah,
yeah. I think I got checked like earlier this month in January, and I believe my total, I want to say my total cholesterol was right around just shy of 300, so higher by modern day standards. But my ratio was totally fine. My HDL was very high. My trigs were very low, so my actual ratio was in the green. And I've never done a CAC scan, but like I don't have any reason to think that I'm at any issues with that.
I want to point something out. Medically, these are amazing pictures, by the way. Robert here has got down to, the reason why he's the Keto Savage is because he's got down to 3.9% body fat. We'll talk about that more in a couple minutes. But something that's critical to point out is there's not a pill for heart disease.
Yeah.
I think it's important to note. And so all we have is pills for other things that we think contribute to heart disease, but there's still a lot that's like unknown. Andrew, we've had how many guests on the show talking every little thing about like seed oils and cholesterol and LDL and HDL and this lipid and that lipid's fluffy and that lipid's heavy and this, and it seems to be a lot of guesswork. Like we do have quite a bit of knowledge now about these different lipids. And there is, calcification and stuff like that happens. And it appears that we want to avoid that as much as possible. But at the moment, we don't even know how to get rid of the plaque once it gets there. And they actually don't know. It's my belief as of right now that they don't actually know scientifically how the plaque gets in there in the first place, because the plaque is ending up in some spots where they're like, there shouldn't really be any plaque here.
Yeah.
But there is. And there's not a pill for plaque. Now, I know that there's some people who might say, oh, well, there's this one and that one. There's not really, at the moment, there's not a clinically tried and true pill for plaque. There's only things that can help with your, mainly your cholesterol. There are some other drugs that they're coming out with that can help with some other things. There's obviously drugs that can help you manage your body weight, helping you manage your energy consumption. And really, if a keto diet was to be dangerous, it would be the same reason why any other diet could potentially be dangerous. If you did a keto diet for 20 years and you overate the entire time, just like with any other diet, if you overate the entire time, had a hard time controlling your body weight, you could have some maybe health outcomes that aren't great.
Yeah, and like when I'm doing a prep, like I'll get my blood labs drawn, at the very beginning when I'm at a surplus, and also when I'm at a deficit, and my lipids and my cholesterol numbers and my hormones change quite a bit throughout that entire time. So like you can change those depending on what your consumption is, for sure.
Mark, with that stuff, like maybe this is a little bit too deep of a question, but have they found any like commonalities in someone that has high, plaque or low plaque or whatever? Like, has anybody put that kind of like information together? Because I don't know, man, that sounds scary. And that's part of why I haven't done it. Because, we've had carnivores on here tell me like, it's not that big of a deal. And then we've had someone like Stan Efferding, who I'm not going to ignore what he says. And he's like, yeah, you should probably cut back on the saturated fat. So again, we have a lot of information coming at us. It's a lot of different information. But the one thing that, like Mark tells me or, just said, it's It's like, well, we can't really do anything once it's there.
And I think those in tandem, like if you're consuming a lot of carbohydrates and a lot of saturated fats, those two together is where you start to run into some risk. Whereas if you're kind of picking in your fuel substrate as your predominant, consumption, then you can kind of mitigate some of those adverse effects. Like I've been, very, very low carb, so my ratio is good. But if I was still consuming the amount of fat that I am currently in tandem with a bunch of carbohydrates, I'd like to have more issues.
Okay, so that's the first time I've heard that.
Yeah, Robert's bringing up an excellent point. We don't know this, we don't know that, but we do know that like fats and carbohydrates together just have a potential for disaster in terms of overeating.
I see. Yeah.
You're like, it's just tough. It's tough not to overeat ice cream. It's tough from a caloric perspective. It's hard not to overeat pizza. It's hard not to overeat if you're eating Doritos and sandwiches and so forth each day. Some of these things don't fill us up enough. There's not enough of a satiety signal. So all kinds of things like that happen when we eat some of those foods. One thing to really be cautious about, though, which people should be paying attention to if you're considering a keto diet or considering a carnivore diet, which I think everyone should. I literally think that everyone should consider these styles of diets, and I think that everyone should just try it. Just try it for a bit. But what I want to say is that if you yo-yo and you go back and forth between keto, carnivore, and just reckless eating, binging, you could be causing a lot of damage. You could be causing a lot of trouble. So that would be something to actually pay attention to. And in that case, I would say, as much as I don't want to promote that people go lower fat, but if you are really struggling and you tend to binge often, you might want to keep those fat calories and fat grams just in check. I'm not saying to have them low, but you might want to keep them in check. If every weekend you fall off and the wheels fall off and you're eating pizza, that could be a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I mean, kind of from a metabolic flexibility standpoint, that term gets thrown around a lot carelessly, but like we're pretty much born more or less fat adapted. Like breast milk has, lactose in it, but I mean, we're pretty much born ketogenic to some degree. And then that gets stripped away from us when we start getting fed, baby food and all the fruit purees and things like that. So most people would benefit from a period of time eating, a ketogenic diet so they can upregulate those fat metabolism, pathways. They don't have to necessarily stay that way. I think it's optimal to stay that way. That's why I have. But if you're going to go back and forth and maybe doing so seasonality with the seasons would make sense. But yeah, you don't want to yo-yo and change it up every week by any means.
Mm-hmm. So when I first even discovered like the ketogenic diet, which was still way later than a lot of people, but the goal was we got to get in ketosis because that's where the magic happens. Should people be concerned with like, oh no, my ketone levels are this or that, and I'm no longer in ketosis? What's the point now? Should ketosis be the goal?
No, you don't have to obsess about the ketone numbers. I mean, if you're eating lower carbohydrates, higher fat, moderate protein, like you're going to have likely more circulating blood ketones, but not having excessive carbohydrate and sugar consumption and processed foods and cereals, like you're going to have less inflammation, you're going to have more insulin sensitivity. Like all those benefits will come to some degree, even if you're not registering high on the ketone stick,
Yeah.
Carbs under approximately how much? Under like 30? I mean, because carbohydrates, they just sort of pop up in everything. And some people are going to probably want to eat some vegetables and stuff. So where's your recommendation on carbohydrates?
I mean, I keep mine less than 20 total typically with the foods I eat pretty effortlessly. A lot of people, if they're at less than 50, that'd be totally fine. And I could consume more and my body would burn it up based off of my activity. There'd be no issue necessarily. But most people don't need nearly as many carbs as they're consuming. I mean, you don't need to carb up before you fold the laundry. People are doing all these crazy things and it's like, you don't need that. Your body doesn't need that,
It's a lot of laundry though. You don't know.
Yeah.
And then just so we're kind of like just painting a picture of like where the macros should land, because I know that you track yours and you've helped a lot of other people with tracking theirs to get great results with their physique. Where should the protein be ish, and where should the fats be?
Kind of depends on the goal. Like I'll change mine quite a bit depending on where I'm at in a fat loss or muscle building phase. Most people would benefit from starting at a higher fat ratio, as high as like 80%, get those metabolic pathways in place, and they can kind of titrate the protein up and the fat down to find their sweet spot. A good, 1-to-1 in grams of fat to protein works pretty well for most people. And then again, depending on what the goal is, you can kind of finesse that as needed. But a lot of people don't start the diet with enough dietary fat. They remove the carbs so that the energy from that is gone. They don't replace that with dietary fat. So they're hoping that it's just going to, tap into their stored fat right off the bat, but they don't have any energy coming in until those metabolic pathways get put in place. They feel miserable, they deviate from the diet, and they're back at square one.
And 1-to-1 protein to fats with this tiny amount of carbohydrates in there probably is what, like 55, 60%?
It's like 68, 69, 70.
Of your calories are coming from protein?
No, that's from fat.
Oh,
so when you're
fat.
at 1-to-1, you're at about a 68% fat.
I see.
68 to 70, depending on how many carbs you're consuming.
And then when you get leaner, though, you start to hedge towards almost like a 2-to-1 protein to fat, or...
So I've got my 7-phase protocol. So I'll start with the higher fat, 80% fat, and then I'll titrate that down while simultaneously bringing my protein up until I find my protein threshold. For me, that's around 200, 220 grams of protein. And then I'll start dropping both dietary fat and protein. So overall calories are continuing to drop. And then towards the latter half of my prep, I'll start throwing in ketogenic caloric refeeds. Those will typically be 30 to 50% calories above baseline. And at that point, I'm at a higher fat ratio, normally 70 to 75%. Sometimes it's even high as 80, depending on how my body's looking, getting up close to a show day.
I see.
So it changes a lot based off of, how my body's functioning. I want to optimize my performance, that I'm recovering well and able to preserve the muscle that I've got. Because when you're dieting down, you're going to be depleted. So preserving the lean tissue you've got is going to help keep that metabolism, functioning at a high rate, and you're just going to feel better. Like you're going to have more energy.
Is it kind of almost safe to say like your protein in certain parts of the prep might be 180 to kind of match your body weight, or 170, and your fats might be like 100, and then on the days when you are refeeding, that's sort of flipped. It's like 200 grams of, something like that.
I'll actually drop my protein quite a bit more than that. Like it'll get as high as 220 when I'm figuring out what that protein threshold is. But my first ketogenic prep, I took my protein as low as 65 grams a day, which is pretty low, and that was for a very acute period of time. I don't recommend that. But what I was shocked by was that I didn't really lose any strength or lean tissue when I was at that super low consumption. I don't go near that low now because I can, manipulate my macros differently and not need to go that low. But it's amazing how low you can go for a finite period of time without really noticing any adverse effects from a muscle loss standpoint.
Do you ever concern yourself with like what's it called? The thermic
effect of food?
Yeah, when it comes to the protein of things, right?
Yeah, so protein has a higher thermic effect of food than carbs and fat, obviously. So some people think if you're consuming more protein, you're going to be burning more calories to metabolize that protein.
I'm one of those people, by the way.
Yeah, but if you look at it, and actually Lane Norton talks about this quite well. I mean, there's differing points of opinion on him, but when you look at the actual increase in caloric expenditure from the thermic effect of food, even if you quadruple your protein, that's not going to result in that many more calories burned. So I don't really use that as a variable that I'm manipulating.
Mm-hmm. It's just going to be a small amount. Like,
super small. Like you don't want that to be the main lever you're pulling.
Yeah, if you're eating like an extra, 200 grams of protein, it's not like you're burning an extra 500 calories.
Yeah, and if you're eating that much, like if you only got so many calories to work with and you want it to, if you're going really heavy-handed on the protein, that's obviously going to mean your fat is going to be lower, but that's where you're getting your energy from. So if your energy is tanking, your performance is going to tank, so you're going to lose more lean tissue, and the protein is going to lead to more inflammation, and you're just not going to feel as well. So I don't typically go too high.
Yeah, I think a really good point here is that protein is not a great energy source.
Not at all.
It's not normally, I guess if you took your protein super low for a long time, like you probably feel bad, maybe lose muscle mass and so forth. But protein is kind of almost like a thing that it's not a great energy source. The fats are the great energy source. And sounds like because you don't manipulate carbohydrates, because you don't really eat them, you mainly manipulate the fats. And it sounds like you also would manipulate the fats with the protein, because the fats are protein sparing, especially when you start to get in more of a ketotic state, the more ketogenic that you are. And that's probably part of your experiment of going way down to 65 grams of protein. You probably can eat 90 grams of protein and 70 grams of protein and probably still hold on to quite a bit of muscle mass because you got some circulating ketones going.
Yeah, now, like my last prep, I think I got down to like 115, 120 grams of protein for that last couple weeks. But that's in the context of also having a ketogenic refeed once a week. So that's going to have a bolus of protein there. So it
might even out.
Yeah. So at that intake, I didn't notice any muscle loss at all.
So to simplify things for me and potentially the other guy that's listening right now that just can't keep track of all the percentages you guys just laid out, for someone like me, I like to keep it simple. Like, okay, 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Like that seems pretty straightforward. Is there a ratio like that for fat? And then we can also take, okay, we're 1 gram of fat to 1 gram of protein, like 1-to-1 ratio. Is there something there where like I'm 180 pounds, how much fat should I be consuming? And then can I just roll that over and say that's also how many grams of protein I should be consuming?
I don't really ever recommend like a set it and a forget it ratio, because as you lean out, your hormones level change, your energy demands change, like everything changes. So I like to manipulate my macros to kind of follow suit with that and stay ahead of it. So I'll typically start at about a 2-to-1 ratio if you have a healthy, maintenance caloric intake at the onset to begin with. And then from there, it kind of becomes more of a 1-to-1. And then I start dropping protein and fat simultaneously, usually protein a little bit more aggressively than the fat. So I'm typically operating between about 70 and 80% of my calories coming from fat throughout the entirety of my fat loss phase, just depending on where I'm at in that fat loss phase.
Okay. And sorry, Mark, because for me, it's really easy to get the protein pretty high and the fat's pretty moderate. Just consuming a lot of Piedmontese beef, like the bavette steak, 100 grams of protein, 16 grams of fat for the entire steak. It's freaking perfect. What does it look like to go 2-to-1 to protein though? Because like in my head, I'm like, dude, I don't even know what I would eat at that point.
Yeah, when you're at 80% fat ratio, you got to get a little creative, but you're not staying there for long, so you don't have to, do anything crazy for long. But I'll typically do a keto brick a day, so it's 90 grams of fat there, and then I'll have a lot more butter or duck fat or like ghee or some fat source, from that, olive oil, avocado oil, and then I'll opt for a fattier ground beef, like an 80-20 or 75-25 or something of that nature. And then as my protein increases and my fat drops, I'll swap that 75-25 out for an 80-20 or an 85-15 or something like that.
And I think, there's some obvious things to do here as well. Like you can cook stuff with, you mentioned duck fat, you got tallow and maybe some coconut oil. I don't really love cooking stuff in like oil, but I will utilize some tallow here and there. But if you, basically if you cook up some eggs and you cook them in like a little bit of tallow or a little bit of coconut oil, and then you throw some butter on them, now you're, in a pretty good ratio. Eggs are usually 1-to-1, usually 6 grams of protein and 6 grams of fat, depending on the size of the egg. I think 1-to-1 is a really nice ratio to just kind of have in the back of your head, just as a convenience thing, because it's easy to see. And like when you're talking about, and it's easy to think about. You're like, I weigh 180, so 180 grams of fat, 180 grams of protein. But if I want to consider more of what Robert's talking about, maybe I want those fats to be a little higher for energy purposes. So I feel good on the mat. So I feel good with my jiu-jitsu. And so maybe just, especially because you're not familiar with that much fat, be cautious of, otherwise you're going to have disaster pants.
Yeah, you don't want that.
On the mats. And we don't want to add a bunch of oil and stuff. So you want to try to add things that are like more natty. You probably don't really use like butters and stuff like peanut butters and almond butter and things like that. But I suppose you could eat some almonds and walnuts and things like that, right?
Yeah, I'll do that on occasion. I'm kind of doing like a meat and bricks only diet right now, but I'll sometimes have the almond butter. One of my clients sent me this jar of this coconut peanut butter from Hawaii, and man, it's just dangerous to have those in the house, man, because I could eat like the whole thing. It's like 1 gram of carb per serving, whereas most peanut butter is like 6 or 7. So I could just crash that whole jar pretty effortlessly. So I got to kind of moderate that.
My brother's girlfriend had a really genius idea the other day. She said a peanut butter tallow.
Oh yeah, it's coming. It's coming.
Peanut butter and tallow. I know you're making the bars, all the different bars, but I was like peanut butter and tallow, like in a little bucket.
Yeah. Peanut butter is like a kryptonite, man. I could just go down on that.
I know. I don't know why peanut butter is ever like a diet food.
Yeah.
Like it's in people's prep. It's like, are you crazy?
Yeah.
Like that sounds like madness.
It's not satiating. It's not satiating. It's hyper palatable. I mean, you can just eat it in excess, and it's not really natural. I mean, you don't really find that in nature, so to speak. So yeah, you can just get a lot of calories without much satiety from it. So probably not the best thing for a fat loss.
Keto brick goes a long way.
Yeah, well,
in terms of adding the fats.
I just crushed one right now. It's the first one I had in one sitting. It was the new one that you guys collabed on, and that was incredible. 1,000 calories, like 86 grams of fat. That's the most I've had in one sitting.
I know your stomach sometimes is a little bit here and there,
That's
but
why I'm
I'd be
nervous about
interested to learn more about what happens later on
I'm
tonight.
curious as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Text me in 2 hours if you're doing all right.
Sounds good. So assuming,
Doubled over in pain in the corner.
Dude, I did get a squatty potty recently.
Nice.
Yeah. I was just thinking like my shoulder's been banged up and I'm like, dude, if I'm sitting on the toilet, like, you know, like maybe this will help. So
I think we're on the same frequency because I've been really thinking about it. Like I was taking a shit this morning actually, and I have like this thing that's next to my toilet that I do put my foot up on, but both my feet aren't up. So I need to get
you're off balance, dude.
I'm off balance. I need both feet. We had Dr. Sean O'Mara on the show. He talks a lot about like sprinting and how when you take a dump, you shouldn't really be even sitting on the toilet. You should be like squatting.
Yeah. He's a great guy.
I was like, I probably need to get the squat.
Yeah, it was what's the guy's name? The guy that we talked about foreskin with.
Oh yeah, he was
Cover
great.
it all.
Do you remember his name, Ryan?
I don't.
Dang it! I feel bad. But
I always
he's the
forget
one that
his
told
name.
us we're all in deep shit because we're not using squatty potties.
I
So
have
had to get
heard
one.
a lot about those. Like Rigel, my son, we got him a little step stool, you know, so
Yeah.
he can use the full size
important.
toilet. So it's like I could probably double as a squatty potty. I'll have to use that.
Oh yeah.
It'll work.
Yeah. Totally free. Okay. Yeah. If somebody's getting their like their numbers right, their macros, their keto-ness is on point. Their diet wasn't a ketogenic diet, but they are in a good caloric maintenance phase. Like so, they're in a good spot to drop weight. What are some of the first things that they'll experience? Right? Because like I just want to know, like, am I going down the right path? Like, because like the first time I was fasting and I started eating. I'm like, Mark, dude, my body's tingling. Like, am I having a heart attack right now? And he's like, sometimes that can happen. So what are some of the first things that can happen when somebody starts diving into a ketogenic diet?
Well, if they're coming from a carb-heavy diet, they're going to probably flush out a lot of water, which is going to flush out a lot of sodium, potassium. So increasing their electrolyte consumption at the onset is going to be key, just so that they're feeling good. They don't have any, muscle cramps or headaches or things of that nature. It kind of depends what they're doing. Like if they're trying to do a fat loss phase, I recommend people, actually stick with a maintenance intake of keto for, a few months prior to actually dropping calories, because it takes a while for those metabolic pathways to get put in place so your performance isn't hindered. And you don't want to start a fat loss phase and automatically not be lifting as much, because that's going to bode well for preserving the muscle you've got. So I would recommend staying at that maintenance intake with ketogenic foods for a few months prior to actually going into the fat loss phase.
Okay.
And you mentioned ramping your salts up, your sodium up to around 15 grams.
Let's go.
Not initially. Like when I'm deep into a cut, like when I'm sub 10%, my craving for salt goes through the roof. So I'll go as high as 15 grams. Generally speaking, about a 2-to-1 ratio of sodium to potassium works pretty well. So I'll start people at like 4,000 milligrams sodium, 2,000 potassium, and then just scale that up based off of how they're feeling. But yeah, when I get lean, man, I crave the sodium.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know that between fasting and keto, sometimes you go to work out and because like a lot of times fasting and keto are utilized. So we always have to point this out, because they're utilized for weight loss.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times that's why you're not feeling great, and if you were in a surplus of calories, we probably wouldn't run into half of these problems, because you'd probably end up with a better electrolyte balance just because you ate more food.
Yeah.
Food is like a shuttling system of electrolytes and so on, and you put salt on your meat and so on. So I think it's important to point that out. But sometimes when somebody's training, they might feel like they're going to pass out. I've heard people say that they've had, kind of heart palpitations or cramps or a lot of these things. Almost all of these things will subside either with more food or more salt.
Yeah, 100%, man. Like I was competing one year, and the guy I was stepping on stage with couldn't hit the poses. Like he was cramping so bad, he actually had to walk off stage, which just sucks. I mean, he puts on all this work, then he can't even compete on show day because he had like done,
suck.
I mean, like like all these crazy peak week protocols people go through, dehydration, carb loading, diuretics. Like it's not healthy. It's not optimal.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you got to stay hydrated. You got to keep the electrolytes in check, and you'll feel way better for it.
Mm-hmm. I know you guys don't mess with this stuff, but I guess what are some of the, I'll say, positive negatives of like keto bombs and those sort of things? Because like that gets people excited, right? Like I'm a huge fan of peanut butter cups, and I can probably go on ruled.me and find like a dope like recipe for something that like, shit, I'd eat that without a ketogenic diet which would then cause a lot of havoc on my stomach and more calories for no reason. But with some of that stuff, where can people run into some problems?
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely incorporate it, but like there's a lot of people in the keto space that think it's all about insulin and calories are not, necessary. Like they don't count. That's what a lot of people think, which is just not true. I mean, everything counts, So like if you're eating a bunch of hyper palatable keto treats and you let your calories get away from you and you're over consuming, you're not going to really optimize for fat loss. So you got to be careful of, full consumption. But yeah, you can certainly use some of those. Now, a lot of those are just packed full of erythritol, and those are going to cause some GI distress for some. So I try to minimize all the sweeteners. Plus, when you're eating sweet foods, you crave more sweet foods, so you're less satiated in the first place. And if I'm in a deficit, I want to make sure every calorie I'm consuming is as nutriently dense as possible and actually bodes well for my goals,
Yeah, it's taken me to be, nearly 48 years old to like look at a food and just be like, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Like all that food's going to do is trigger me to want to eat more of it. Like it's going to be satisfying in the moment. But if I had I can't eat half a slice of pizza or I can't have a slice of pizza. Maybe the only way I could have a slice of pizza is if there's only one slice of pizza in the house.
Yeah.
But if there's like more than a couple, then that means if I'm going to eat one, I'm going to eat all. Mm-hmm. And so we have to be very cautious, and I think it's important. I think what I admire about you the most is the fact that you're unwavering. You've been on this keto train for a long time and you haven't like bounced, you're not like, oh, Paul Saladino's eating fruit or, this guy's only eating meat and I'm going to go this way and I'm going to now, go a different route rather than being keto. You've stayed keto the whole time. And I think that is, that's admirable. It's not easy to do that because we just see so much stuff, on the internet. But I think a really key factor for people is ask yourself, why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you doing the current diet that you're doing? Why did you select this? Why did you choose to do keto? Did you choose to do keto to make up a bunch of keto frankenfoods that are just going to put you over your caloric limit? Being over your caloric limit is by definition the standard American diet, since most people in America continually gain weight every single year. The only way to gain weight is to be in a caloric surplus consistently. So you might switch to keto or you might switch to carnivore, and then you're just doing the same thing again. And so I think people need to be really cautious of this. And we've seen this with paleo. We've seen this with like a gluten-free movement. It's like, oh, I'm eating a gluten-free donut. It's like, well, okay, it's nice that you have that option. It's nice that we have technology today that can make that for us. It's nice that we have these keto Pop-Tarts and these different options for us. But let's not try to like live off these things because it's just going to get us in a caloric surplus.
Yeah, I feel like people that are in, traditional society, they can eat intuitively with keto and they'll see a lot more success necessarily than they would with a standard American diet because it's less hyper palatable, but with all the advent of new keto foods and treats and processed junk, like that becomes more, that water becomes muddy.
And to be fair, even your bricks and even the products that I make, the electrolytes that I make, they don't have any calories, but the protein powders and stuff that I make, I mean, you make one of my protein powders, you take the Total Carnivore Steak Shake, throw some heavy cream in there, and you're over your allotment for calories, and it's going to taste amazing.
Yeah.
Right? But if you do that day in and day out, you're not going to make the progress you're looking for.
Yeah. I mean, I make a keto brick, I make a keto product, and I'm always the first to tell people, like, look, this should not be the staple that you're consuming. Like, eat other whole foods.
I'm not losing weight, Robert. I don't know what's going on.
Eat whole foods and then use that in tandem with it. Like, it's a great option. I eat one every day when I got down to 3.9%. But like you got to make the base of your nutrition come from real wholesome foods for sure.
All right, Mark, you're getting leaner and leaner, but you always enjoy the food you're eating. So how you doing it?
I got a secret, man. It's called Good Life Protein.
Okay, tell me about that.
I've been doing some Good Life Protein. We've been talking on the show for a really long time of certified Piedmontese beef, and you can get that under the umbrella of Good Life Proteins, which also has chicken breast, chicken thighs, sausage, shrimp, scallops, all kinds of different fish, salmon, tilapia. The website has nearly any kind of meat that you can think of. Lamb is another one that comes to mind. And so I've been utilizing and kind of using some different strategy, kind of depending on the way that I'm eating. So if I'm doing a keto diet, I'll eat more fat, and that's where I might get the sausage, and I might get their 80-20 grass-fed, grass-finished ground beef. I might get bacon. And there's other days where I kind of do a little bit more bodybuilder style, where the fat is, might be like 40 grams or something like that. And then I'll have some of the leaner cuts of the certified Piedmontese beef.
This is one of the reasons why like neither of us find it hard to stay in shape, because we're always enjoying the food we're eating. And protein, you talk about protein, leverage it all the time. It's satiating and helps you feel full.
I look forward to every meal. And I can surf and turf, I could cook up some, chicken thighs or something like that and have some shrimp with it, or I could have some steak. I would say, the steak, it keeps going back and forth for me on my favorites. So it's hard for me to lock one down, but I really love the bavette steaks.
Yeah.
And then I also love the ribeyes as well.
You can't go wrong with the ribeyes. So guys, if you guys want to get your hands on some really good meat, you can head to goodlifeproteins.com and use code POWER for 20% off any purchases made on the website, or you can use code POWERPROJECT to get an extra 5% off if you subscribe and save to any meats that are a recurring purchase.
This is the best meat in the world.
So every time we talk and we hang out, I always want to jump on a ketogenic diet just because of everything. Like you promote it, not that you're promoting it, but you just speak so well about it. And obviously you're, a walking billboard for it.
Jacked.
Yeah. My thing though, cause you're like, why would you want to do it? It's like, well, you guys saw me in the gym. I couldn't press, as much as I wanted to, because my shoulders banged up. I get, choked out in jiu-jitsu. I get my arms, broken almost, in jiu-jitsu all the time. So like my tendons, my joints, obviously my back is still, it's kind of always in the background, literally. It's gotten a lot better. But for me, it's just the pain. So when it comes to the ketogenic diet, is it just the inflammation, or is there anything else going on there when it comes to like pain management?
Yeah, I mean, the anti-inflammatory component is one of the biggest, benefits of a ketogenic diet. Like when I was doing standard American diet, carb heavy diet, I would do heavy leg day and then I'd be wrecked for the next week. I couldn't do squats for another week. Now, I mean, I literally just got done doing 2 years of full body doing like legs every single day. And I wouldn't have been able to do that previously. Like I was training with that degree of frequency without any issues from a joint pain or inflammation standpoint. I mean, ketones are very anti-inflammatory in themselves. And that's honestly one of the benefits of why I do this, because I want to be able to do this for the long haul. So yeah, in your situation, I feel like that alone would be reason enough to do it.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing too is like, I hear a lot about this, and you spoke about it with like fasting, but like the cognitive, enhancements that you could get from a ketogenic diet. Obviously, we had several doctors on this podcast talk about the mental health aspect of a ketogenic diet and how that can be beneficial. But is there also something there for like just literally day to day getting productivity done? Again, like maybe even memory retention and that sort of thing. Because I'm also always chasing nootropics, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah,
like to improve all that stuff. But maybe I could just get all of this from my diet and not go chasing supplements and all these like hacks and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, ketones cross the blood-brain barrier. They provide direct energy for the brain. And you just have much more even keel energy. Like you don't have the hypoglycemic, hyperglycemic moments due to blood sugar regulation with carbs. So you're just steady state with energy. Like I eat, 2 meals a day at the moment, and I'm just productive. I'm not fixated on food all day long. I could podcast and record content and have meetings all day long without issue. So yeah, I think from that standpoint, it's great. And then as far as the neurological component, what you do long term, I think is really that's one of the reasons I do the diet, because when you look at neurodegeneration, it's coming from insulin resistance in the brain, it's coming from inflammation or oxidative stress. And if you're able to hedge against all that via a ketogenic diet, you're going to set yourself up for better success long term, more so than any other diet, in my opinion. And I don't want to be plagued with Alzheimer's dementia when I'm 78 years old. I want to be able to play with my grandkids.
I love personally love the convenience of the ketogenic diet. Years ago, I chose to eat out more often, and getting food from a restaurant and not having carbs was not hard.
Mm-hmm.
Might seem like for some people might think that it would be difficult. Sometimes people get confused on your order or whatever, but it's like, it's not hard. They forgot, they gave you a bun or whatever. It's not hard just to not eat it. I would say, hey, no croutons and things like that with a salad, and it would have croutons on it, but no problem. Just swipe them away, give them to whoever else I'm eating with. Maybe they want to eat them. It wasn't really a big deal. Nowadays, I've taken it upon myself to cook more often. And even back then I'd cook a little bit, but to be honest, I didn't know how to cook very well. And so sometimes I'd rather eat at a restaurant, even though I didn't really have the money for it. I was kind of like, scratching together whatever I could to kind of, get an omelet or whatever for breakfast and things like that. But over time, I've learned to cook my own meals a little bit better for myself. My wife is, she's always cooking up amazing stuff that sort of fits the recipe. But I believe that you've gone a step further. Like you actually hunt a lot of your own food. It sounds like you have like a sanctuary where you can you have your own animals to hunt, like almost on your own property. It sounds like you just walk outside and with a shotgun, and I'm picturing you with the cowboy hat, cowboy boots, and going out and hunting. I know nothing about hunting. You probably don't even use a shotgun. I don't know.
It depends what I'm hunting.
Yeah. See, I know nothing about nothing. But anyway, as you're going out there and killing hogs with a knife, jumping out of a tree, you have learned to, do all these things. And I think you have a garden at your house and all that. Like, what's the evolution of that? Like, where did some of that come from? Did you grow up that way, or is this something that's newer?
Yeah, no, I grew up hunting. But then once I started doing keto, like it made sense because I started doing it before it was popular. So it was before there was any processed version of keto. So it was just all real food, all whole foods. And once you start eating all real whole foods, you want to try and just blend that into your life as much as possible. So, and then I've really started talking with a bunch of local farmers. I've had, I've been to White Oak Pastures, had Will Harris on the podcast, met with him. It's like, we're all part of a unique system. We're all, symbiotic in nature. We eat predominantly fats and proteins, animal-based fats and proteins. A lot of people are removed from that transaction. They just get their food wrapped in cellophane at the grocery store. But like when you are trying to eat the highest quality, most nutrient-dense foods you can, you want to source that the best you can. And that means you're not trying to, step on the toes and just play in, because you vote with your dollars. So I don't necessarily want to support, these big box, conglomerations that are doing factory feedlot beef, and because that's not a good quality of life for the animal. So I can kind of relate with the vegans that don't want animals to suffer. I don't want animals to suffer. But like when I hunt, I complete that circle of life. Like I take that life, but then I make every use of that animal that I possibly can. And it's the highest quality animal that I can consume. You appreciate the life all the more. You're feeding your family, you're providing for them, and you're just completing that circle of life. And to me, what more can I ask for?
It's just interesting. Like I've never felt that before. I've never done that before. So I need to come to your.
Come on, man.
I need to go out to Arkansas and check some of this out, because like that seems like an amazing experience. It seems like a way different experience. I've been to ranches and I've seen cows, and like where I live is like kind of out in the country, and there's cattle down the street and stuff like that. But I don't really know a ton about like the processing, the slaughtering, all the different things that are kind of involved in that. I guess the closest thing I do have to that, I guess that when I was a kid, I used to fish, and I'd fish with my grandfather, and you gut the fish and all that kind of stuff. So I have at least some version of that. But for the most part, it's like, grab something out of the freezer, make sure it's defrosted, have it on a plate, and then just like shove it in my face. There's not really much gratitude there. There's a chunk that's probably missing.
Well, I hate food waste. Like I hate when people throw away food. And when I went elk hunting in Colorado this past year, we shot a big bull elk at 800 yards, 650 yards. And then we had to hike 3 miles in to get it. We backpacked it all out. Like we got, almost attacked by a mountain lion. Like it was quite the ordeal. But you complete that circle of life. You put in so much freaking work to get that meat back. You don't want any of it to go to waste. You don't want to lose any of it. It's like the last thing I want to do is throw something away. Like I make use of every single part of it. I want to respect that animal by, giving it a good clean death, which is, more not enjoyable, but like if they were to die out in the wild, they're going to be ripped to shreds alive, like a clean kill with a well-placed bullet is less suffering for them. And then that food nourishes me and my family for months to come. That's a full circle of what it should be.
And you can tell this might be the dumbest question ever, but you could definitely tell the difference between something that you hunted versus something that is wrapped in plastic inside a Walmart or something.
Oh yeah, man. When you're eating like wild game meat that's been living off the freaking slopes of Colorado mountaintops for its whole life, like there's just a whole nother level of flavor and nutrient density in that.
And so how long does it take to like chop it up, and I think the proper term is like to quarter it up and then like backpack it out. Like how, like what's the
It
process?
just depends. So like for that elk, we shot it at 650 yards. I was hunting with my good friend Michael. He's a former Green Beret. We shot at the same time. We did like a countdown, like sniper style. We shot at the same time. We hiked up there. The bull dropped almost instantly. The bullet holes were 4 inches apart. We get out there, and it's like 6 p.m. at that point. We start cutting it up. We were done by 10 p.m. I bumped my backpack, and this
4 hours of
walkie-talkie.
cutting.
Yeah, no joke, because he's like on the side of a mountain, so like you're rolling him over, and it's hard work. And then I bumped my backpack, my walkie-talkie went off, and this mountain lion that was like 20 yards away growled at us. So we hightailed it out of there, came back the next day to get the rest of the meat. He had drugged the head off 100 yards, eaten out the tongue and the eyes, and we never saw him, but I mean, definitely a mountain lion. And then we brought some friends. They helped pack it out the next day, and we spent all the next day butchering it up, grinding it up, packaging it up. So it was a 48-hour ordeal for sure.
So the lion didn't go for the liver? Because I thought that's what they go for first every time.
Now, I didn't know this, but apparently mountain lion, they really fixate on the eyes and the tongue. So like they went for that head, man.
Creepy ass cats.
Yeah.
Oof.
How much does an elk weigh?
This one was probably about 800 pounds.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of meat to haul around.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I was hurting, man. Like, cause we were out there at night. I'm climbing over deadfalls. It's cold. I got this heavy pack on, full of meat, and can't see anything. I mean, you got to be in shape to do that.
What did you shoot it with?
300 Win Mag.
Yeah, I asked that like I know what you're gonna say. I don't know shit about guns either. So
Yeah, no, 300 Win Mag for that one. Which 650 yards is a long shot, man. That's longer than I've ever killed anything.
Yeah,
but it was cool. It was cool.
In your as you've been doing the keto diet and stuff, what sort of gave you the idea of making the keto brick? Like, where did this come from?
So when I was, like I said, I started keto 2014, 2015. Wasn't any products on the market at that time. I did my first ketogenic bodybuilding prep in 2017, and I wanted a way to just streamline my meal prep and just simplify things. So I started out formulating a bunch of different things, throwing some foods together, see what worked, see what didn't. The cacao butter was a good quality fat source, high in stearic acid that was relatively shelf stable. So we made that, and I was, eating a version of it early on. I never planned on it being a product, but I was documenting my prep on YouTube, and people kept asking about it. Hey, what's this? What's the recipe? Where can I get it? And I just kind of wrote it off. And then my mom was probably one of my few YouTube subscribers at the time. She's like, man, you got to make this into a product. So my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, we rolled up our sleeves and started, diving into the wonderful world of food product manufacturing. And we've kept everything in-house from day one. The first night we did production, we made 142 bricks, each one at a time with a measuring cup and a spoon. And we put it on the website the next day. They sold out in like 2 minutes. And I'm like, all right, I think we got something here. We've just grown it from that.
What was the first brick? What was the first flavor?
It was weird, man. The first legit brick was the mocha cream, which is like our OG. But before that, like the earlier versions, we made like a turmeric brick. So it was like yellow. So we tried all different kinds of things, but I tried baking them. I tried all different kinds of like keto brick cereal. So all kinds of weird stuff. But the brick that we got now is kind of what the first aha moment was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have seen people put like little dots in a mold, and then they would just like eat that as cereal.
Yeah, it's pretty good. They'll do like little Dippin' Dot molds. They'll make a bunch of them, then they'll put like a milk alternative in there.
Here's one of the keto bricks, and this is Primal Fudge that we did together. This one has the total carnivore chocolate and also beef tallow, 40 grams of protein.
I think that one's 43. It should
43 grams of protein.
42 and 89 fat.
And 89 fat. Every brick has around 1,000 calories-ish, right?
Yeah, every brick's pretty much 1,000 calories, so that's a constant there.
Yeah. You were mentioning early in your lifting or early on in your life, you were 115 pounds?
Yeah, I was 115 pounds soaking wet, man. I was scrawny, super tiny, super self-conscious, didn't wear a T-shirt my last 2 years of high school because I didn't want anybody to see me. And then my uncle, who owns his own business, he was big into like football and he was outgoing. He kind of took me under his wing, showed me how to do a bicep curl, and I just got hooked, man. And then I just fell in love with it. And then I was kind of, subscribing to the whole eat big to get big philosophy. So I was eating 6,000 calories a day, bulked up to 230. And that's when I was just like, this is not healthy, not good. Then my first prep, lost 80 pounds. And that's kind of was the catalyst for my eating disorders, which led me to keto.
And what was your eating disorders like, and how did you kind of break free from them?
After that first competition where I lost all that weight so quick, I won the show, but then that night we all went out to Red Lobster to celebrate, and I ate like everything, man, everything. And I ate everybody else's everything. Man, I was so sick. I was laying in the hotel bathtub, couldn't puke, couldn't go to the bathroom, couldn't do anything. I was so sick, but I put on like 20 pounds overnight, and then I like just felt defeated. Like I had thrown away all the work that I had put in to get to that point. And then I just kind of started binging and purging, and that just plagued me for 2 or 3 years. I remember going to IHOP one day, ordering everything on the menu, eating it all, paying my tab, walking out in the parking lot, puking it all up, and then doing it over again.
That day? Like right
the next day. Yeah,
okay.
like the next day. I remember going to this super fancy steakhouse in Minnesota, and it was like, this is a place where you take your family to, you know, because like the portion sizes are huge. I went there by myself, and I was with the railroad at the time. I was working on the railroad. So I had like overalls on, and I was like not looking like I was supposed to be there. And I ordered everything. They were like worried that I wasn't going to pay. I probably looked broke or something. And I ate like all the steak, all the cream spinach, and the brownie came out. And the brownie was like literally a 1-by-4 square brownie. I ate half of that thing, puked, and then I was like trudging back to the hotel. I stopped somewhere and finished eating the rest of the brownie. Just like weird stuff, man. Like people shouldn't live like this.
Just savage everything.
Yeah, yeah, but just not healthy, not sustainable, not good.
How'd you get away from it? How'd you get help or?
So I didn't really get formal help. I just recognized that wasn't going to work for me. I was just a slave to food, which is super common in the bodybuilding space. So I started doing all these different types of diets. I was doing flexible dieting, if it fits your macros, bro dieting. Then I started playing around with carb backloading by John Kiefer. And I mean, you know that it's basically keto during the day, and then you're supposed to eat a bunch of high glycemic index carbs at night. So I'd be slamming down, brownie and ice cream covered in syrup and peanut butter. And it kind of made me justify the binge, because that's kind of how it's supposed to be. But then I recognized that I just felt better without the carbs. So I started doing carb backloading without carbs, which lo and behold is pretty much keto. So then I kind of dove into that world and just fine-tuned it.
Yeah, backloading is an interesting concept that didn't quite pan out. It's kind of like I would put it in the same category, but it had a lot more legs than this, but the croissant diet.
Yeah, exactly.
Remember we had the croissant diet guy?
Yeah, what's the deal with stearic acid? Because you mentioned that also.
It's in the bar, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's got a lot of interesting information on that, and a lot of the research is still up for debate, but stearic acid is basically a long carbon bond, which is why the bricks are so shelf-stable at, higher temperatures, because that long carbon bond. Cacao butter is the highest source of stearic acid, followed by beef tallow. And there's a lot of, guesstimations as to how beneficial that is. But his theory is that stearic acid makes the actual adipocyte itself, so the actual fat cell, more insulin resistant. So normally we want to become more insulin sensitive, but if you're speaking about the fat cell itself, if it's more insulin resistant, it's going to be less prone to store more fat. So that's one of his theories. The jury's still out, but from a GI standpoint, it's usually tolerated very well. People don't typically have GI distress from a long carbon bond like that in stearic acid. So it's good for an energy substrate, doesn't cause GI distress, and it works well for the bricks.
And where does all this knowledge come from?
For me?
Yeah.
I just trial and error, man. Like just a life of trial and error, experimentation, just a passion for this lifestyle and helping people become their best self, man.
115 pounds, eating a bunch of junk food, throwing up.
Yeah.
You start to end up doing keto and you're lifting and so on. And how'd you get to be like 140, 150? And like, what did that feel like? When's the first time you like wore a tank top or t-shirt and kind of maybe felt less self-conscious?
So this is kind of a funny story.
You're like, last year.
No, not quite last year. So like I said, I didn't wear a t-shirt.
3.9% body fat was the first time I took my shirt off.
No. So in high school, like I said, I didn't wear a t-shirt my last 2 years. I just like became a slave to the gym, man. I was eating everything. I was training hard, training like a madman. My first year and a half was training at my dad's house. That was like tractor weights and pieces of random equipment I had laying around. My first bench was a green Igloo ice chest with a towel over top of it, like super primitive stuff. But then my senior day of high school, the last day of school, I'm like, all right, y'all hadn't seen me for 2 years. I'm going to take my shirt off and unveil myself as a bodybuilder. So that was like the last thing your senior year. I had everybody come to the English class and I did like a pose down in front of the school. And that was my first,
Wow.
quote unquote bodybuilding show. And then I competed for the first time in 2012 in college. But yeah, I was more confident then, but I hadn't really, I was still self-conscious, but at least I was wearing t-shirts at that
That's
point.
amazing. Have you seen the clip of Arnold like posing in front of that girl? Have you seen that?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It reminds me of that. Like it's
Pretty
like
much same
super
scenario.
awkward. He's like flexing and he's thinking she's going to get turned on. And she just starts like giggling.
Yeah, that was pretty much the case for sure. Yeah, this is my very first competition here. I was shredded, but just scrawny, man, just tiny.
Yeah, you did a good job, especially with your legs, your hamstrings, and some of the other pictures that we've seen of you. What are some things that you did to bring up your legs? You did mention like training them every day.
Yeah, I mean, just more. I mean, my first year, I didn't really train legs because I was like the bro that just trained upper body. But once I realized that I got to get my legs caught up, I just started hitting them hard, heavy squats, ass to grass squats, just all the basic stuff, compound lifts with more frequency, more intensity, more volume, and then just eating for recovery.
It's kind of easy to see when you look back. It's easy to see like, oh, that dude just needs more time.
Yeah, I mean, time, especially with natural bodybuilding, man. Like a lot of people that are at their peak with natural bodybuilding are older. A lot of them now that are young, it's just crazy. They're like phenoms. But
we're not even talking about like more prep time. We're talking about like just need more
time,
more years under your belt. More bent over rows, more stiff legged deadlifts, more.
Yep.
Just a little bit more of everything for a while, right?
Yeah, I mean, time is where the details get worked out. So like, and the beautiful thing about bodybuilding is like it's an old man sport, as they say. Like you just keep getting better. I mean, I feel like I look better now than I did 5 years ago. I mean, there's not many sports where you can say that.
Yeah, we've seen Nsima, who's a natural pro. Other people kind of say like, oh, I want to do a show, and they're like, I'm thinking about doing this. It's like 6 months away, and he's like, you need like a year and a half.
Yeah,
and I think that's a wonderful thing. Hopefully that's not crushing anybody's hopes and dreams, but same thing with like a marathon prep.
Yeah,
like don't start running and then be like, I'm going to run to, because you had a family member die and you're going to run in their honor like next week or whatever. You can do what you want, but it doesn't actually make any sense. Yeah. Like you're not going to feel the way that you think you're going to feel. You're just potentially going to have a bad time, get hurt. You might learn some things because it is kind of cool to jump into some stuff here and there. But I think, having some patience and just taking your time and saying, you know what, why don't I learn this sport? Like I'm not just going to all of a sudden try to get in shape and learn bodybuilding midway, like, with a contest, 6 weeks away or something like that. It's like you'd be better off bodybuild for a little while, do your 3 sets of 10, get used to counting your calories, get used to tracking everything, get used to balancing everything out. And then maybe start to have it. Oh yeah, I think maybe sometime next year, I think maybe I'll do a show.
100%, man. On the first marathon I ever ran, I listened to Joe Rogan's podcast with Goggins. And like after the podcast was over, I'm like, all right, I called my buddy up and we booked ourselves for a marathon like the next week. I hadn't run in years prior to that point. I bought a pair of tennis shoes for that event and I just ran the marathon and my feet were wrecked for a week afterwards. Like it was no bueno. So yeah, don't recommend that.
All the mistakes that you tell people not to.
Yeah.
When it comes to your training methods, I mean, is it just pretty straightforward? Like, barbell movements and that sort of thing? Yeah,
pretty basic, man. Like I've got my own gym and I've got, just the basic barbell, free weights, a little bit of cable attachments and dumbbells. And I'll typically, do, like I was doing the full body. So that was pretty good because it was good with my travel schedule because there wasn't like any big holes in my split. Depending on when I was traveling. So every body part gets trained every day, typically 5 or 6 exercises in total, and then 4 to 5 sets with like one primary compound movement. Now I'm doing kind of like a heavy hypertrophy split, so like a heavy push, hypertrophy pull, something like that. And then I'll just alternate it every time I target those muscles, but nothing fancy, super basic stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where's your drive come from? Is it grandpa? Is your dad? Where is it? Is this like in your family lineage? Like what's going on with you?
Yeah, I mean, I've got, I don't know, there's probably not any one factor. Like my family's pretty driven in general in their own rights and in ways. Like my parents just retired. They bought a sailboat. They're about to set sail and sail around the whole world.
What?
So like we do crazy stuff like that.
That's cool. I'll go with them if they want.
Yeah, man.
They won't even. I'll be like a fly on the wall.
Yeah, so like I like that. I'll
bring a couple bricks.
Yeah, bring a couple bricks, man. I hooked them up with some bricks for that trip. But then my uncle's an entrepreneur. But I don't know. I feel like I've got the potential to keep going, keep doing, keep building. I want to build a legacy. I want to build a business that I'm proud of. I want to be a light for others. I want to be a good role model for my son and my kid on the way, my wife. I want to just, be a light because there's so much negativity and bullshit in this world. If I can counteract that by just being the best I can be, then that's what I'm going to live for right there.
How about, you said your uncle, but like, dude, like I'm barely seeing this side of things, but like trying to run a successful business, freaking hard.
Yeah.
So did you have somebody in your corner that's like, was that guiding light for you? Or is this, again, like you and your wife just getting together like, well, that didn't work. Let's try this instead.
So my uncle was a big role model for me to want to start a business. But I lived away from him when I started my business. So he wasn't like in my back corner, showing me how to do things, but he was a good inspiration at the onset. But like we do very different style businesses. Like he was before social media and that kind of marketing came to be. So like he still doesn't do social media. So like a lot of what I do now, I just learned, bootstrapped and then just kind of dove into the research, read a bunch of books, watched a bunch of YouTube videos and just trial and error thing, kind of like I did with bodybuilding. I've got people that have certainly taught me things. But yeah, this is a clip of us during the first production run at Keto Bricks. My wife and I. Yeah, that was long days, man.
Yeah.
Oh, I got those bricks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when we wrapped them in tinfoil.
Yeah.
We were both working like 4 jobs, and then we'd get off work, drive 3 hours to the nearest commercial kitchen, stay up all night making bricks, drive back, and then do it all over again, like no sleep.
Do you think, so the first batch sold out, do you think that came from just the fact that people were looking for that type of product, or do you think it mainly came from like the YouTube channel?
A little bit of everything. Like I came into the keto market at the right time because like I said, there wasn't really any products there. I was coming into keto and putting out content around keto when keto was gaining in popularity. So that certainly helped. But I think like I've got a super loyal customer base. Like I'm very, very grateful. And I think they're so loyal because they can go back and look at this footage. They can go back and see me busting my butt in the very beginning with no 2 pennies to rub together for my name, and they just want to see it succeed because they're the reason it's succeeding. Like they're the ones that make this possible,
Well, I think it's cool that you are the brand. I think that's helpful. How many like followers, subscribers, and stuff did you have before you made the product? Like, there must have been some sort of jump off point where you're like, this really makes sense to make this. Did you have 10,000 followers or how many?
No, because I started putting out content in 2016. So I started the podcast and Keto Savage and coaching July of 2016. I had no followers then, and then we launched the Keto Brick in, I believe, March of 2018. So we probably had a couple thousand followers on the different platforms, but I didn't know if Keto Brick would take off or not. I had no clue. I just felt like it was a very tangible way for me to do something. And I never originally wanted to have like a physical product. I wanted to just work nomadically from a computer. But now that I have it, I love it. Like I love that I've got my own warehouse space. I love that I can go into the warehouse on Saturday with nobody there, crank up the music and sweep my own damn floor. Like it's my space. It's tangible. We don't live in a world where people make things anymore. Like it's all, digital and transactional, whereas this is something physical,
And how many people do you have now working for you?
There's like 8 or 9 of us on site, and then I've got a couple different agencies and teams that work remotely, but there's about 9 of us, or I guess 8 of us physically on site.
Digital marketing and all that kind of stuff too. Do you guys mess around with much of that?
A little bit. Like we're trying to, really just ramp up the social platforms and the organic reach. And we've dabbled a little bit in like paid advertising and trying to figure that out. But it's pretty much all just been organic up to this point with a little bit of ad spend, but basically just putting out content. I've been, I originally...
Sending out free bricks too.
Yeah, sending out free bricks. But like I got into content creation after reading Gary Vaynerchuk's book, Crush It. And he was basically like, look, figure out what you love, figure out how to add value with it, and then just put out as much value as you can. So that's when I started the podcast, the YouTube, everything.
Gary V, unbelievable, calling shots back in the day, talking to us about how the news reporters aren't going to be the news reporters. It's going to be the people that are going to be the reporters. It's going to be your next door neighbor with their phone and all this stuff. And I remember reading that being like, what is he talking about?
Yeah.
And then that's
exactly what happened.
That's where we're at now.
Dude, so the book Crush It, has a lot to do with the success of this podcast. Because after I read it, I was like, all right, here we go. And I was trying to publish something on literally every platform like 25 times a day. You know, like that's what it was. And you can see like the downloads kind of tracking here. And I started doing that and it was like, boop. Dude, it like tripled overnight essentially.
It's just not easy. You just got to put in the
really
work.
Difficult.
You know, like you got to grind. And like people that are working a 9 to 5, they want to come home and watch Netflix, prop their feet up. But like if you want to build your own thing, there's no rest for the wicked. You got to just, hustle it and make it work,
It's great when you do own a business or you have some social media platforms and things like that. And people are like, hey, you should try this. And you're like, yeah, I know, but I'm already trying so many other things,
it's
like,
hard.
Hey, have you ever taken your content and like made it smaller? Why don't you put the podcast in like 10-minute clips so it's shorter with different titles?
How come you're not on Rumble?
Like, yeah. I went to look for you on.
Me on every
I went
time.
to look for you on Rumble. You weren't there. And you're like, man, like, okay, I can only do so much. And I mean, that's one of the things is you have to figure out what your core competency is. Like, what are you good at? And what do you have right now? I think that that's a really critical thing. Where is somebody at in their career? What do you have right now? And what's the tangible thing that you can offer to the public to maybe like give to them, rather than thinking about like a money type thing, but what can you give to somebody? How can you provide value? You hear that often. How can you provide value? And then the money and the success and the clicks and the likes and, some of that positivity will happen over time.
And that's honestly why I'm so, happy to be part of this ketogenic carnivore community as a whole, because like most of the people, and there's some bad apples for sure, but most of the people are in it because they themselves experience some life-changing benefit from eating this way, and they're just compelled to bring that to the forefront so other people can benefit from it. Like most of the people are here for the right reasons. It's just a really solid community of people that want to help other people. And if you're doing that, the value, like the money will come if you just in it for the right reasons,
And I think you said one of the reasons you started the ketogenic diet was you listened to Dominic D'Agostino on Tim Ferriss's show, right?
Yeah, way back in the day. I guess that was published in 2015. He was on there talking about the benefits of keto, eating sardines and all that good stuff. And I'm like, it's crazy because I've had Dom on my podcast several times. Now he's an amazing individual. And to think that, I heard about it originally from him way back then, it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he was talking about deadlifting like 500 pounds for
after like a 5-day fast or something.
10
crazy.
Reps or something like that.
He's a beast. He's a beast.
Yeah, I remember hearing him on Rogan and stuff like that too. And for my brother and I, we've been doing ketogenic diets for a long time. I think like mid 90s is sort of where we cut our teeth on some of the ketoness that was going on back then. The Body Opus diet, the metabolic diet from Mauro Di Pasquale, and a bunch of different things. And we've done it, and then we've come off it. And like I've done different things. Obviously, when I was powerlifting, I weighed 330 pounds. Along with eating meat, I was eating a lot of other things, eating pizza and stuff like that to keep my body weight up for a period of time. But I always go back to keto. Time and time again. And every time I go back to it, I'm like, why don't I just stay here?
Yeah.
And so maybe the last 2 years or so, I don't want to say I've been keto because like if you pricked my finger, if you walked up to me and pricked my finger, I might not be ketogenic because A, I might not have eaten enough fat, or B, I might have eaten a little bit of carbohydrate from like fruit or something like that. But for the most part, I've been either keto or carnivore for the last couple of years, and it feels awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm doing it with, doing 200-meter sprints, 400-meter sprints, running, 10 miles a week, 15 miles a week. I'm not running crazy amounts at the moment in terms of distance, but even when I was running greater distances, it felt good. Injury-wise, I feel really good. I don't have an injury. I'll get a tweak here and there just like anybody else. I might get too sore. I might end up with this or that, but a little myofascial release type of stuff. And sometimes just bumping up my calories a little bit seems to solve a lot of those problems.
Yeah, I mean, and people obsess about the ketone readings, but like there's times where my ketones are low, but if I'm not eating carbohydrates and my ketones are low, it's not like I'm using carbohydrates. Like my body's still optimized for fat metabolism and consuming animal fats and proteins. So like don't obsess about the ketone readings. I mean, you're metabolizing fat for fuel,
I remember when we used to go like visit Chris Bell when he was living in LA, like both of you guys were putting a lot of like MCTs in your coffee, and you were having bulletproof coffee, and it just seemed like it was a different phase of the ketogenic diet at that time. Just like carnivore goes through phases. It's like hardcore carnivore, and then now all of a sudden it's like, well, you can have some fruit here and there. Like it goes through phases. But what do you guys think are some of the biggest changes from, let's say, again, like maybe just as short as like 10 years ago or 5 years ago to now? Like, is there anything really, has anything really changed in a ketogenic diet?
The biggest change for me has been just a manipulation of fat. Yeah. I still will have a bulletproof coffee. Like I luckily didn't fall into the trap of like trying to eat a crazy amount of fat, because I think I did that when I first started the ketogenic diet, like a long ass time ago. I remember like getting the 80-20 ground beef and having bacon and cheese, and just like thinking like the more fat that I consume, the more fat that I'm going to burn. And I had the wrong kind of idea of it. It didn't work the way that I wanted it to back then. So, but now I just have a better understanding of like, if I just want to get a little bit leaner, I'm just going to manipulate the fats and proteins just slightly. So as an example, I might, forego the bulletproof coffee on a particular day. I may choose to get a little bit leaner ground beef. I may choose to do things a little bit leaner, but it has to be for a short period of time. Otherwise, I'm going to run into a brick wall. I'm not going to feel as motivated. I'm not going to feel as good during my workouts.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like from a societal standpoint, the really low protein, super high fat was popular 10 years ago. And now it's like super high protein, not enough fat. Now it's weird because like that pendulum, man, it just swung. And the answer's always been right there in the middle. Like people go to these extremes with things. But yeah, I feel like you get the right ratio of fats and proteins dialed in, for you as an individual. Like you don't need to go to the extremes necessarily.
Not to date this podcast, but we're a couple days away from Trump getting inaugurated. And I believe he's starting to follow a low-carb diet. Right, Ryan? Is that what we were talking about earlier? I would love to get your guys' thoughts on this.
Hey, I mean, I'm all for it. I feel like, there's so much noise right now in the dieting space. And from it's funny because like within the keto carnivore sphere, people have always said it's not going to come from the top down. It's always going to be a grassroots movement, which I agree with. But if we can have, a couple positive momentum shifts from the top, I'm certainly all for it.
Yeah, I just think it's freaking great because, like, I mean, who better than to be an advocate for it than the guy that's supposed to be in control of the most powerful nation in the world?
Yeah.
It's an easy diet to follow.
Yeah,
I know that people think it's hard. It can be hard, but it also can be easy. I mean, the fact that you can eat like hamburger patties and cheese and bacon and sausage, I mean, you're not going to want to eat that all the time, every single day in excess, but it's a good place to start.
And where can you get that?
Yeah, everywhere.
You can get that everywhere. You can go to McDonald's and get that.
And when I was talking about like eating out at a restaurant and stuff like that, when you have breakfast in the morning, every place has eggs. Every place has bacon. I mean, it's really rare. You'd have to go out of your way to find some place that doesn't have eggs and bacon for breakfast. And then when it comes to dinner options, almost every place in America anyway either has a steak or a chicken option or or a burger. You got a video to play?
Yep.
Check it out.
I saw a tweet last night. You're sitting like at a table with Trump. What's going on?
A couple of weeks ago, we got an invitation. President Trump would like to have dinner with you and your wife. He'd like to invite you down to Mar-a-Lago for a meal. And he's gearing up towards, obviously, an election that's coming up here in very short order. He's already announced, he's declared. And so they said, would you be available on this night? And I said, I'm going to make myself available. So yeah, we flew down and we had an excellent meal with the 45th president of the United States. And I could tell you, by the way, for a fact, he ate a cheeseburger with ketchup, no bun, 3 barbecue ribs, grilled jumbo shrimp that he loved, which is fantastic, by the way. And for dessert, bananas Foster with the caramel with sugar donuts. However, he didn't eat the donuts.
I was like, okay, he's going keto, he's going carnivore until you got to the bananas Foster.
I think it's Trump keto.
I saw a tweet.
Trump keto.
Trump keto.
I think that's
the new
dope.
term.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's great.
In talking to his son, I know Don Jr. a little bit. I'm like, hey, is your dad like? He's like, no,
Not happening, huh?
I'm like, hey man, if you're, he's like, nope.
Nope.
He's like, hopefully he does make a change. Because again, I think the keto diet, again, like one of the cool things about it is I realize it's absent of some of the foods that you love, but I think a lot of the foods that you love are present, and those foods taste good. They're satiating. They're satisfying. When you have a lot of fat, you eat something like a ribeye. I mean, that just kind of checks all the boxes.
Yeah.
That feels really good when you have an opportunity to eat something like that. And then if you need to reach for something sweet, you grab yourself a keto brick.
Yeah, I mean, it's all just a matter of what do you want to sacrifice? What do you want? And at the end of the day, like I haven't deviated in 10 years, but like that doesn't mean I haven't had an enjoyable, moment from time to time. Like on Christmas, my wife will make like a keto cheesecake. It's still totally ketogenic. It's all using high quality foods, sweetened with stevia. So like I don't have any blood sugar response. It's not breaking my ketogenic meal, but it's not something I would eat every single day.
Cheesecake brick.
Yeah, it's pretty good. But like this thing is freaking delicious, man. Like I like it more than a normal cheesecake, but I can feel good about eating it, and it's keeping me on track. So it's all just a matter of what are you willing to put in.
Yeah, I liked Fathead pizza when I was messing with the keto diet.
Man. Fathead pizza, that's what I use for my refeeds before a competition. I'll make a big Fathead pizza, and that's my bolus refeed meal.
What's a Fathead pizza again? I kind of forget about the
I don't
ingredients
remember.
a little bit.
The crust is made with almond flour and mozzarella cheese.
Yes.
And it's so good, man. Like it's a nice thin crust. It crisps up. I'll put like my ground beef or ground lamb on that with some pesto sauce and some anchovies. Anchovies for the salt.
That's not me.
I know that some of us, we get focused, we get honed in on our meals, and we have basically the same meal kind of all the time.
Same.
But you can make a lot of this really fun.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
for
you
sure.
can have a Fathead pizza night. You can have a night where you have Mexican food. I mean, a lot of these foods, you just get rid of the tortilla or find a low carb tortilla.
Those egg life wraps are the bomb.
What's that?
Those egg life wraps, have you had
Oh,
those?
yeah.
Those are super tasty. And like restaurants are willing to work with you. Like I'll go to a Mexican joint and I'll bring like a bag of pork rinds and I'll say, hey, can I get the nachos and just swap this bag of pork rinds out for the chips? And they totally accommodate me.
That's
so you
amazing.
can make it work. Yeah.
Yeah, or like hot wings, right? Or what, buffalo wings from Buffalo Wild Wings, supposed to be cooked in tallow.
Yep, they're cooked in tallow. I don't think they have bread on them, stuff like that. So I mean, and then you can cook a lot of these things at home. Is another option. Porking Good, that company makes
those
a
are
lot.
super delicious.
They make a lot of really great products. The Porking Good pork rinds. They
battering mix they use.
Yeah, they have the mix that you just dump on your food. That shit's awesome.
Yeah, I tear that stuff up.
That shit's really good. Are there any other products that you like that are kind of in the keto realm that you'll have here and there?
I don't eat a ton of product. I mostly do all my own cooking, or my wife does, I should say. Carnivore Bar is really good. I like their stuff. The keto bricks, obviously, I eat a lot of. I don't really do much supplementation. But my staple is ground beef and eggs, man. Like I can eat ground beef and eggs or ground lamb or some ground meat on steaks, obviously. But if I'm tracking macros, ground meat is super easy. And then eggs, and you're set. That's all you need.
I know you just literally said like the two different things, but like what are some combinations that you also like? Because that's kind of what it is for me. Like if I have steak, I gotta have it with rice.
Yeah.
Like I gotta have the 1-2 punch. And my thing, because I'm not experienced with the ketogenic diet, I just think, I'm going to go keto. That means I'm basically going carnivore because I'm just going to eat the steak without the rice. But like, I want some variety in there still.
Yeah, I don't need a ton of vegetation, but my wife, like when we have people coming over, she'll make like Brussels sprouts or broccoli cooked in bacon grease. So she'll just cook up a bunch of bacon in the cast iron skillet, then throw in some Brussels sprouts with that, mix it all up. And that's, you can't go wrong with that.
Yeah.
Steak and eggs, man.
I know.
Just cook a couple eggs and throw some butter on there.
Yeah.
It'll be awesome.
Yeah,
They'll
eggs make
hungry.
everything taste good.
Yeah.
They do.
That's
They
wild.
do.
Yeah.
I think the evolution of the keto brick is amazing. I think a lot of the new bars that you have the tallow in, gives people some other great options. I know you have a lot of different ideas and stuff coming down the pipeline. So congratulations on all that. Where can people find the keto bricks? Where can they find out more about you?
Appreciate it, man. Keto Brick for the bricks, and then Keto Savage for the content on social. I'm Keto Savage. And then I've got, if people are interested in competing, we're hosting our first competition this year in September in Northwest Arkansas, naturalstatesavages.com for that one. And then my course and all of my content framework, the AI, the tribe membership, all that's at ketobodybuilding.com.
Strength is never weakness. Weakness never strength. Catch you guys later. Bye.